Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about my week number 2 running back rankings for fantasy football in 2021. Inside today's video, we're going to be talking about my top 32 ranked running backs for the week, as well as going in depth into explaining why I have them ranked at each and every single spot inside the top 32 for week number 2 of the 2021 fantasy football season. But before we get on into the in-depth breakdown of these running backs, the deep dive into them, I'd like to ask, if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. Not only is it free, I put out content every single day to help you guys win your 2021 fantasy football championship. And while you're down there, whether you are new to my channel or not, please make sure that you hit that like button down below to help boost this video up the algorithm so more beautiful people like yourself can see today's video. I'd also like to ask that if you guys have a Twitter and would like to follow me on there, please do so. I put out a bunch of content about fantasy football, especially on Sunday when all of the injury news comes out. I retweet that all. So follow me on there at NotoriousFNTSY. Link down below to my Twitters down below in the description. So without further ado, let's get into it. My first ranked running back for week number 2 of the 2021 fantasy football season is Christian McCaffrey of the Carolina Panthers, going up against the New Orleans Saints. Now, at every position, there are a couple of guys that are basically matchup proof. At running back, you got Christian McCaffrey, you got Alvin Kamara. In most years, you have Saquon Barkley, you have Ezekiel Elliott, you have Aaron Jones, who are these guys that are so good, and it doesn't even really matter who the fuck they are playing. Now, maybe it was stupid to say Aaron Jones because, right, he had a bad game last week up against the Saints. Ezekiel Elliott played bad against the Bucks, and Saquon Barkley isn't 100% healthy, but you guys can kind of understand the sentiment that I'm making here. Despite the matchup, regardless of who they're playing against, you are going to throw these guys into your lineup. Christian McCaffrey, last week up against the New York Football Jets, he dominated. This week he gets the New Orleans Saints, who played very, very stout up against the Green Bay Packers, but I believe that the defense comes back down to earth, that the Carolina Panthers are able to put up at least some semblance of a fight up against them, because the Green Bay Packers just rolled over and died. They didn't have any fight in that game. I believe Christian McCaffrey has a big game here up against the New Orleans Saints. At number 2, we have the other running back in that game, Alvin Kamara of the Saints, going up against the Carolina Panthers in Carolina. This is an excellent matchup for Alvin Kamara. Obviously, last week, the Jets didn't have any running backs just pound the ball down the throat of the Carolina Panthers defense, but Alvin Kamara is a key focal point of this offense. Without Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara is the best receiving option on this team. Alvin Kamara saw a lot of action up against the Green Bay Packers last week. I expect Alvin Kamara's receiving total also to increase this week, because last week up against the Packers, they didn't really have to throw the ball all that much. Jameis Winston barely even threw the ball in that game. Sure, he threw for 5 total touchdowns, but it wasn't like a back-and-forth affair, whereas it could be here up against the Carolina Panthers. At number 3, we have 9-inch Nicholas Chubb of the Cleveland Browns going up against the Houston Texans. The Houston defense last week looked like the best defense you've ever seen grace the gridiron on an NFL football field, because up against the Jaguars, they made Trevor Lawrence look silly. It seemed like Urban Meyer had absolutely no game plan on how to beat a Texans defense that, on paper, when you think about it, they're pretty bad. But somehow they just couldn't do anything. Nick Chubb here going up against the Houston Texans defense. This is a very solid matchup for him. The Cleveland Browns are a team that like to run the ball a lot. It's a no-brainer to rank Nick Chubb inside the top 5 running backs this week up against the Texans. At number 4, we have Dalvin Cook of the Minnesota Vikings going up against the Arizona Cardinals in Arizona. That Arizona Cardinals defense, just like the Houston Texans defense, looked really, really good on Sunday. They were playing up against the Tennessee Titans. They had Ryan Tannehill on his ass all the time. They were on Ryan Tannehill before the guy even realized the football was in his hands. He was on to the ground. He stood no chance up against this Arizona Cardinals defense, and I don't think that it's because the Arizona Cardinals defense is one of the best defenses in the league. I think much of that can be attributed to the fact that the Tennessee Titans offensive line played terrible. Taylor Lewan was just on his ass all game. I feel as though the Minnesota Vikings will put up a much better fight than the Tennessee Titans did, so I think Dalvin Cook, he's also one of those running backs that's matchup proof. Dalvin Cook here at number 4 up against the Cardinals. Still, though, slightly risky because of the matchup. At number 5, we have Aaron Jones of the Green Bay Packers going up against the Detroit Lions. Going into the season, I was banging the drum aggressively for Aaron Jones. I was telling you guys that Aaron Jones is on a team that is going to be good. Rodgers is there. Devontae Adams is there. The offensive line is still pretty good, and Aaron Jones was eating last season. A.J. Dillon is there. Jamal Williams leaves, and I feel like A.J. Dillon isn't going to eat too much into Aaron Jones's workload. Now, we did see A.J. Dillon get a lot of use last week, but that's because they were down and out of the game. So they just started using A.J. Dillon. I think this week, up against the Detroit Lions, unless the Green Bay Packers literally just fucking stink, unless Aaron Rodgers just leaves town, goes to do Jeopardy, goes to some other team, requests a trade or something, I feel like there's no way that the Green Bay Packers don't smack up the Detroit Lions. I feel like Aaron Rodgers is going to have a huge game, and Aaron Jones is always going to be a key part of this Green Bay Packers offense, so I like him a lot in this cupcake matchup up against the Lions. At number 6, we have Najee Harris of the Pittsburgh Steelers going up against the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, with Aaron Jones, as well as Najee Harris, this is the best point in the video to talk about this. Please do not overreact to one game. Do not overreact to the fact that Najee Harris didn't get a lot of yards in week number 1 up against a relatively tough run defense in the Buffalo Bills. Don't be discouraged by Aaron Jones underperforming up against the Saints. Now, would any of us have expected Aaron Jones to have a bad game against the Saints? Probably 0 people in the comments last week were thinking, hey, Aaron Jones is going to play like absolute shit, because that would make no sense. Najee Harris up against the Bills, sure, it was a tough matchup, but he is the workhorse running back on this team. But what I want to take away from that matchup up against the Bills on Sunday is not his yards, it's not his carry total, but what it is that I want to key in on here was his usage. He was the only running back on the Pittsburgh Steelers who had a carry in that game. He is the clear workhorse running back of the Steelers. They're going up against the Las Vegas Raiders this week, who just got ran a train on by the Baltimore Ravens with running the ball. Obviously, they ended up winning that game, the Raiders, but they got ran on all game long by the Baltimore Ravens, so Najee Harris should have no struggle here having a solid game. At number 7, we have Austin Eckler of the LA Chargers going up against the Dallas Cowboys. Now, anytime you have a running back, a wide receiver, a quarterback, a tight end going up against the Dallas Cowboys defense, it's basically a wet dream scenario. Austin Eckler is going to dismantle this Dallas Cowboys defense. Austin Eckler didn't see too many dump-offs in that game last week up against the Washington football team, which is shocking. It is so shocking because much of Austin Eckler's fantasy value is from catching the football. It's not from him getting 20 to 25 rushes every single game. That's not what Austin Eckler is built to do. He had a solid showing last week, but I believe this week up against the Dallas Cowboys, we see him much more involved in the receiving game, because this is going to be a back and forth fight between these two teams. Up against the Washington football team, it was a relatively low scoring game. I expect this game to go over the total, which I believe is set at 55.5 right now. I think Austin Eckler has a big game here up against them boys. At number 8, we have Joe Mixon of the Bengals going up against the Chi-Town Bears. Joe Mixon was one of those running backs in the offseason that I was fine drafting, but I didn't feel excited doing so, because I feel like Joe Mixon has pulled the rug from out underneath me so many times at this point. I always believed that the guy has the talent. He has all the talent in the world, but will he be able to put it together for a season? Because we've seen it before. He has 2, 3, 4 good games in a row, and then it never really sticks throughout the season, or he has a hot finish to the season and then isn't able to do much. Last year, he had one big game up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and besides that, the guy was the snoozer for fantasy football. So he has this big game week 1 up against the Minnesota Vikings. Will he be able to continue on to that and build onto a great season? I believe this is an all-right matchup up against the Bears. Now, realistically, before the season started, I've probably said realistically a bunch of times in this video. I always say it a lot. A lot of people thought the Bears would have one of the better defenses in the NFL. They have had that for the last couple of years, but it seemed like up against the Rams that they weren't all that great. Now, then again, there's a huge difference between the Rams offense and the Bengals offense, but I think Joe Mixon will still be able to rush the ball relatively effectively here up against the Chi-Town Bears. Next up, we have Derrick Henry of the Tennessee Titans going up against the Seattle Seahawks. Now, I talked about this before when you're talking about Aaron Jones and Najee Harris. Please do not panic with Derrick Henry. Unless, just like with the Green Bay Packers, unless the Titans, a team that basically everyone assumed was going to make the playoffs, potentially make a run deep into the playoffs, and they just somehow crumble down and they do nothing, it would be so shocking. Derrick Henry is a stud. People drafted him number 3, number 4, number 5 overall in the draft. If you have him, you're not going to panic. The Seattle Seahawks defense didn't look that great up against the run against Jonathan Taylor last week. I think Derrick Henry is relatively involved in this game. The only worry is that the Seattle Seahawks are going to have a high uptick of points in this game. They're going to be able to score with just simplicity. It's so easy up against the Tennessee Titans defense, so you got to hope that they're able to at least run the ball at points in the game, because we all know that Derrick Henry is not involved at all in the receiving game of the Tennessee Titans, but I still think he's fine and has a bounce-back game up against the Seattle Seahawks. Closing in the top 10, we have Ezekiel Elliott of the Dallas Cowboys going up against the LA Chargers. Again, same sentiment. The guy has a bad game up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, and people panic. The tough part about Zeke this week is he does have a tough defensive matchup up against the LA Chargers. Antonio Gibson did look pretty solid up against them in week number 1, so I'm not all that worried, but this definitely isn't some simple matchup for Ezekiel Elliott to have a huge bounce back game, but I believe he will bounce back and definitely look a lot better than he looked last week up against the Bucs. And his usage, just like with Najee Harris, even if he didn't have a big game, his usage was very, very good, and that's what you want to see when you drafted Ezekiel Elliott. Now, onto running backs 11 through 20. If you guys have ended up enjoying thus far, please make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hitting that like button. I would appreciate it a ton. At number 11, we have Chris Carson of the Seattle Seahawks going up against the Tennessee Titans. Last week, the Seattle Seahawks railroaded the Indianapolis Colts, and Chris Carson was relatively involved, but he didn't get as many touches I believed he would in that game. Now, this week up against the Titans, my assumption is that the Titans will at least be in this game. They'll be close in this game. Hopefully, they're able to turn it around, and Chris Carson will be able to get a lot of rushes in this closer game up against the Tennessee Titans, unless they blow them out, and then guess what? Later on in the game, then Chris Carson's going to get those rushes. Chris Carson is the clear workhorse running back here. Rashad Penny ends up getting dinged up, like usual. Again, I don't root for injuries here. It's just something that we see every single year, which sucks for Rashad Penny, but it really does open the door for Chris Carson to see even more touches. He got a little bit of receiving work last week. He's not going to be a guy like Austin Eckler, like Alvin Kamara, like Christian McCaffrey, who's going to see like 10 potential targets every single game, but he will maybe get 3, 4, or 5 in this matchup up against the Titans, which will be very, very nice for us. So Chris Carson, running back 11. At number 12, we have David Montgomery of the Chi-Town Bears going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. I forgot to mention this off the rip, but in these ranking videos, the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, or tight end, if they were made after Thursday Night Football, none of the running backs, Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissic, or Saquon Barkley, Devontae Booker, will be mentioned in this video because they already played. And in my opinion, it is useless to talk about a guy that already played when you're looking to set your lineup for Sunday and Monday now. Those guys, you know, they're already either in your lineup or out of your lineup, so you're trying to make decisions with the players that are still available to play. So David Montgomery of the Chicago Bears going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. Dalvin Cook looked really, really good up against the Bengals defense last week. David Montgomery, despite them not looking too hot against the Rams, despite the Rams defense being really good, and despite the fact that Andy Dalton didn't look good at all, David Montgomery was still able to have a hell of a game early on in the game. He had that huge rush. I wish he scored a touchdown on that, because I bet some serious money on the Chicago Bears running back David Montgomery to score the first touchdown of the game, but it is what it is. The gambling gods do not like me, but it's okay. David Montgomery should be in for a solid game this week up against the Bengals, though we didn't see him get that much receiving work, which is a little bit questionable because Tariq Cohen isn't there. Again, I'm not going to throw some type of a fucking hissy fit here or something about it. We all know Matt Nagy is a bit of a stooge. At number 13, we have DeAndre Swift of the Detroit Lions going up against the Green Bay Packers. Now, coming into the season, I will admit, I was low with them apple bottom jeans boots with the fucking fur on DeAndre Swift. I was super low on him. I thought Jamal Williams was going to have a big impact. If you watched the game on Sunday, he was. He got a lot of usage, but they were able to surge back into that game, giving a lot of value to Swift as well as to Jamal Williams. Here up against the Packers, I don't think it's going to be the same story. I think the Packers step on the gas and do not let go. DeAndre Swift's value comes basically from the receiving game in this matchup. He is one of the most talented receivers on this team, and he plays running back, so he will get a lot of usage. There are going to be games, though, this season where I guarantee you where you're going to be shit out of luck with DeAndre Swift because they can't run the ball, and maybe the defense figures out, hey, maybe we should try to actually stop DeAndre Swift in the receiving game, and then he ends up with a bad game. But here up against the Packers, I got him as RB number 13. At number 14, we have JT, Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts going up against the LA Rams. Like I said with David Montgomery, the Rams defense is pretty solid up against the run. Obviously, it's pretty scary to try to run up against Aaron Donald, but David Montgomery did it with efficiency. Jonathan Taylor should be just fine in this game. The only worry with Taylor is that he's not uber involved in the receiving game. He's going to get receptions, but Nyheim Hines is the third down running back on that team. Marlon Mack, who I thought would have at least some involvement, basically seems irrelevant in this offense unless maybe they're just smacking up a team and then maybe he comes in later in the game. Obviously, we didn't see that up against Seattle. Jonathan Taylor's in an all right matchup here. The biggest downside, like I said, is that he won't see that many receptions, which are needed when you're going up against the Rams, because I predict that the Indianapolis Colts will be down in this game. At number 15, we have Eli Mitchell of the San Francisco 49ers going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, with Elijah Mitchell, I had a tough time ranking him because the amount of risk that comes with Elijah Mitchell is basically at the max. He is a boom or bust player completely this week. I wouldn't be surprised if he took the Philadelphia Eagles and skull fucked them into the next universe. I also wouldn't be surprised if Kyle Shanahan just does what Kyle Shanahan does. You think it's Elijah Mitchell? Bada bing, bada boom. It's Trey Sermon season. It's JaMychal Hasty season. I wouldn't be surprised if any of those scenarios happen. Now, with Elijah Mitchell, I am a fantasy player that likes to take risks. I want to win my game. I'm not looking to play it safe. I'm not looking to necessarily keep it super safe this week. It's week number 2. I'm trying to win this fucking game, so I'm going to play Elijah Mitchell if I have him, even if it is very risky. Now, if you're someone who's trying to keep it safe because maybe you're a little bit worried, maybe Mitchell won't get a majority of the touches, which is a great argument to make. Let me know down below in the comments what you guys think about Elijah Mitchell. Are you with me that he has the potential to be a top 12 guy, or do you think this guy's a complete avoid play this week because he is one of the most polarizing players going into this game? So I am confident in Elijah Mitchell, but if you're looking to be a little bit safer, then maybe just start like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Damian Harris, Darrell Henderson, Miles Sanders, Kareem Hunt, the guys on this list ahead of him. That's okay with me, but I am someone who likes to take risks, and especially if you're in a fab league where you bet your whole fucking wad of budget on this guy, you almost have to play him just to hope that he plays good here. Up against the Eagles, they do have an alright run defense, but I think Elijah Mitchell should have a solid game with just how effective the San Francisco 49ers are at running the ball. At number 16, we have CEH Clyde Edwards-Helaire of the Kansas City Chiefs going up against the Baltimore Ravens. Now, last week was kind of my worst fear for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which is that maybe, just maybe, this team doesn't need a running back. Maybe it doesn't matter who the running back is, even if Clyde Edwards-Helaire is solid, that maybe he just can't crack that top 10 like a lot of us want him to. And that's okay if he doesn't. And he finishes running back 16, 17, 18, because then it wasn't a complete bust. Because last year, you guys were drafting, and I was drafting as well, Clyde Edwards-Helaire in like the top 10 picks. Some people were drafting him inside the top 5. So they were immensely disappointed in the production that he put up. This year, you didn't have to do that. You didn't have to blow a first-round pick on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So if he doesn't pan out being the top 10 guy, it's very unlikely that he finishes outside the top 24. This matchup up against the Ravens isn't cupcake, but it also isn't super difficult. So I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is in a solid position, especially if the Ravens are able to fight their way back into this game. Now, the Chiefs up against the Ravens are 3-0 with Patrick Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson. Does that mean that the Baltimore Ravens are shit out of luck and they can't win this game? Obviously not. The any given Sunday thing is very, very true. These are two good teams, two of the best teams in the AFC. Not necessarily the top two, but some of the best teams in the AFC. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is in for an all right game. But again, I'm starting to worry a little bit about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Number 17, we have Damian Harris of the New England Patriots going up against the New York Football Jets. Now, the only risk with Damian Harris, it's not the matchup, right? The Jets' defense is bad. Realistically, if Damian Harris is given that workload that he was given week 1 up against the Dolphins, where he got 100+ yards, he's going to smack the fuck out of the Jets. But he did fumble in that game at the end of the game to cost them the football game. So, that's the worry. The worry is that Bill Belichick puts his hoodie up, his sleeveless hoodie up, and puts Damian Harris into the doghouse. Kyle Shanahan and Brandon Ayuk scenario there. Does that happen? In my opinion, I think Bill Belichick realizes that Damian Harris is the best player on this team at the running back position, so he plays him, and he lets him play well up against the Jets. I think he probably yelled at him in all week when they're looking at the footage, when they're talking in practice, all that. He's chewing into him. But I think Damian Harris will be perfectly fine this week. Chef's kiss, magnifique, excellent matchup up against the Jets. At number 18, we have Darrell Henderson of the LA Rams going up against the Indianapolis Colts. With Henderson, Harris, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I was not really like confused, but it was really tough to figure out where to put Darrell Henderson, because I wouldn't be surprised if he outscored all of these guys. inside of the top, or like ahead of him, like Damian Harris and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, because I believe that the LA Rams are just an elite situation to be in for Darrell Henderson. Now, obviously, he's not Cam Akers, but he does fill the role relatively well, look good up against the Bears, should look pretty solid up against the Colts here in Indianapolis. At number 19, we have Miles Sanders of the Philadelphia Eagles going up against the San Francisco 49ers. Now, this is the case of a matchup that I don't like that. I don't like it. I don't like it against the Niners. The Niners defense looked good early on in the game up against the Lions. And then magically, they go to this prevent defense. Now, I've ranted about this in the last 2 rankings video, so too long didn't read. The short story here is, why do teams run the prevent defense? Because it doesn't prevent anything. It just lets them mosey up onto the field. It doesn't make any sense. The only time, in my opinion, you should utilize the prevent defense is when they're running 4 verts. When they're running the Hail Mary at the end of the game, you want to put all the guys back. Go ahead. That's fine with me. But in the fourth quarter early on, what are you running prevent defense for? You were stopping them all game. Now you're just letting them walk off the field. It makes no fucking sense. Miles Sanders, there is a clear situation where they're going to use other running backs behind him. Kenneth Gainwell isn't necessarily a threat to becoming the number 1 running back on the team, but if the Eagles are going to continue to use a 2-headed running back system there, then Gainwell's going to be involved enough to, in a way, kind of cuck out Miles Sanders on a weekly basis. Now, that did not happen up against the Falcons, but Gainwell did get usage. We saw it with our own 2 fucking eyes, and that does worry me a little bit here up against the Niners. At number 20, we have Kareem Hunt of the Cleveland Browns going up against the Houston Texans. Now, I've said this sentiment all offseason long. I said it in week number 1. Kareem Hunt is a running back that you play that's just safe. He's like wrapping a fucking condom over your running back 2 spot, because Kareem Hunt is never gonna, in most situations, have a game where he is amazing, where he finishes inside the top 12. But he's never going to have that game where he really shits the bed for you. He's just a safe player, but with very little upside, in my opinion. Now here, up against the Texans, this is a clear matchup where there is a lot of upside because of how bad the Texans defense should be. Again, the Texans defense looked amazing up against the Jaguars, but I expect them to look way worse here up against the Cleveland Browns, who are going to be able to run a lot in this game, because realistically, unless Tyrod Taylor looks like Patrick Mahomes like he did on last Sunday up against the Jaguars, I expect the Browns to be up in this game and Hunt to be able to see a lot of usage, so I project him as running back number 20 on the week. Definitely a higher upside, much higher upside for Hunt this week compared to the other games we'll see in this season. Coming in at running back 21, we have James Robinson of the Jacksonville Jaguars going up against the Denver Broncos. Now, week number 1, Urban Meyer basically did his bird box impression. He closed his eyes and basically just didn't give the ball to James Robinson. He doesn't it's like he didn't watch any film from last year. It's like he had no idea that James Robinson is the only way you can move the fucking ball if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence struggled immensely with interceptions. I think he has a better game this week up against Denver, but this is a tough task. I'm not ready to run away from James Robinson. I'm not ready to be completely nervous. This matchup, though, is scary. That's why he's running back 21. I believe that Urban Meyer isn't an idiot, in a sense. I believe that he will give James Robinson more playtime, more usage. Well, not more playtime, but more usage. They need to establish the run. In order to beat the Broncos, you have to run the fucking football down their throat and tire them out. Let Trevor Lawrence do his thing. If James Robinson is more involved, he could easily be a top 12 running back on the week, but that's the risk you are taking. The fact that Urban Meyer might be a dumbass. He might just be. Carlos Hyde got some decent usage, which cut into James Robinson. So this week, we got to hope that Urban Meyer flipped. Hopefully, Urban Meyer saw that when Lawrence threw the interception, that James Robinson ran about a zillion miles an hour. He was on the left side of the field. He ran up, and then he ran to the right and chased down the guy who picked off Trevor Lawrence and tackled him. This is a guy you need to give the football to. This is a guy that could easily rush for over 1,000 yards on the season. Please, Urban Meyer, if you are watching this, give this guy the ball. And I'm not saying this as someone who has James Robinson or something. I'm just saying this as someone who watches football. James Robinson's good. Give him the football. But again, Urban Meyer, not the sharpest knife in the pantry. Is that where you put the knives? The pantry? Is that what that's called? In the cupboard, maybe? That's the word there. Number 22, we got Myles Gaskin of the Miami Dolphins going up against the Buffalo Bills. Najee Harris got shellacked by the Bills defense. This is a tough matchup, but my expectation is this game is going to be a lot more high scoring compared to the Steelers versus the Bills. But both of these defenses are really good. Why do you think it's going to be high scoring? Because it's the AFC East matchup. But Nick, the Dolphins against the Patriots wasn't high scoring. I'm aware. What I do realize is that this is a game, as a Dolphins fan, that there's always a lot of points. There just always is. Last year, Josh Allen, Matt Barkley bent over the Dolphins in Week 17. It was a high-scoring game on one side. The Dolphins looked terrible. If Tua really is the guy that all of the beat writers were talking about in training camp, if he was the guy that I saw in preseason make these decisions, make better decisions, if he was the guy that just beat the Patriots, now it wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty, but he looked solid. Myles Gaskin has a decent shot to have a solid game this week up against the Bills. I think there is some slight risk, but I think the receiving volume will be solid in this game. Running back 22 at 23, we have Chase Edmonds of the Arizona Cardinals going up against the Minnesota Vikings. Entering the season, I was off of the Edmonds train. And I'll admit it, I thought James Conner was going to be more involved. James Conner was involved, but a majority, at least half of his work was gotten in the fourth quarter when they already beat down the Titans and they're just running the ball. That's with James Conner, and that's okay, because there's going to be a lot of games in the season where that happens. But for Chase Edmonds, it seems like he's the clear number one back there, which is shocking because of how Cliff Kingsbury treated him with Kenyon Drake. When Kenyon Drake wasn't playing too well last year, they weren't really using Chase Edmonds, which was confusing. It was shocking. That's why I believed in James Conner, but that's okay. I'm fine being wrong. I like Edmonds here up against the Minnesota Vikings. At number 24, we have Kenyon Drake of the Las Vegas, turn down your volume, Raiders up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Great matchup here. This is not the greatest of matchups, but Kenyon Drake is without Jacobs. But Nick, Gruden said that Peyton Barber was going to be the starting running back. Yeah, okay. Sure, maybe he'll get more rushes, but Drake's going to be in there for the receiving work. Drake looked really good last week up against the Ravens defense. I think he looks good here up against Pittsburgh with a lot of dump-offs coming his way. At 25, we have Tyson Williams of the Baltimore Ravens going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, this is a situation, just like with Elijah Mitchell, where I'm going to roll the dice and throw Tyson Williams out there in a lot of situations. The risk is immense because, hey, at the beginning of the game, he was the guy rushed extremely well. Later on in the game, misses a couple blocks, makes some bad decisions. Boom, Latavius Murray's in the game. This is a team that can easily utilize two running backs. They've done it in the past. So, with that said, I still like Tyson Williams against the Chiefs, but just don't be like, holy shit, he's going to do exactly what he did to the Raiders, because there's a possibility that Latavius Murray takes over as the running back one in Baltimore. 26, we have Mike Davis of the Atlanta Falcons going up against the Bucs. This is a awful matchup. This is an atrocious matchup. It's so bad, but there's also the chance that the Falcons boot up and play way better in week 2. It's going to be tough against the Bucs. All of his value in this game is going to come from catching the ball. If he doesn't get 5-6 catches in this game, then he's probably going to be bad. But we're also at the point in the rankings where things get really dicey. So I like Mike Davis, not a lot, but I do like him above the other running backs listed below him, except for maybe Nyheim Hines, where it is questionable, where maybe you want to start Hines over him. And I'll talk about that right now. Nyheim Hines of the Indianapolis Colts going up against the Rams. If you are in a full PPR league, I would argue that that is possible because, like I said, the Rams are going to get up in this game, and the Colts are going to have to pass into the game. And like I said with Jonathan Taylor, they're going to use Nyheim Hines to catch the ball, not necessarily Jonathan Taylor. And if that is the case, if they're in third down with these passing scenarios, then Nyheim Hines is going to get a lot of volume from the dump-offs. That's why I got him at 27, got him a lot higher, I believe, than I had him last week. At number 28, we have Uncle Lenny Fournette of the Bucs going up against the Atlanta Falcons. Now, this is one of those situations where you basically have to close your eyes, roll the dice, throw one of these guys into your lineup, and just hope that he is the starting running back of the Bucs. Because if Leonard Fournette's the guy, he has the potential to literally be a top 10 running back here up against a bad Falcons defense. If it's Ronald Jones, he has the exact same chance. If it's Giovanni Bernard somehow, then guess what? Giovanni Bernard can be a top 10 running back this week. That's just how it is. This Bucs offense is potent. It's going to score a lot of points. They could potentially be up big late in this game and run the ball gently down the stream later on in the game. Now, that's how I'm going to project this to happen. But who will be the starter? Ask Bruce Arians. He said it was Ronald Jones, but I don't believe him. I don't believe Bruce Arians. Bruce Arians, with running backs, he just lies straight to your fucking face. He'll go to the podium. I'll grab my water bottle. He goes to the podium and he says, they ask you, hey Bruce, what do you think about what do you think about the running backs? And he's like, yeah, you know what? Like Leonard Fournette, he had a good game, but I think Ronald Jones is going to be the starter next week. And if Ronald Jones is not the starter, don't be shocked at all. That's just how Bruce Arians does these things. That's just how he does it. Would I be surprised if Fournette had a big game? No. Would I be surprised if Jones did? No. But every week, there is going to be immense risk with throwing that guy in your lineup. At number 29, we have James White of the New England Deflatriots going up against the New York Football Jets. While I like Damian Harris, while Damian Harris saw a severe increase in uptick in targets in week number 1 compared to last season, I think he had 7 targets. 7 fucking targets on the season. Last week, against the Dolphins, he had 3. That's almost half as many targets as he had all last season in one game, which is promising for him. But James White was still involved in the receiving game. In PPR, half PPR, I like James White. But in standard, James White really isn't a guy you should be looking for. At number 30, we have Melvin Gordon of the Denver Broncos going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Melvin Gordon, he was blowing the back out of the Giants defense later on in the game. The Jaguars defense doesn't look good at all, but Javonte Williams, he's still glooming in the distance. There's still a chance that he gets a decent amount of usage like he did last week. Just like I said all offseason. I was telling you guys, Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon, this is going to be a split. This isn't going to be Javonte Williams' season like everyone thinks it's going to be. In week 1, that was not the case. In week 2, maybe it is the case because, again, they get such similar usage that it wouldn't be surprising if Javonte Williams, with the 15 carries he could potentially get, outscores Gordon with the potential 15 carries he's going to get. It's going to be a close split in touches every single week. So again, while he had that big game, if you have Melvin Gordon and some silly person in your league wants Melvin Gordon, they think he's a top 12 running back, then trade him away right now. Trade him away right now. But he isn't a good play. He's a good play this week against the Jaguars, but it is risky because of the situation he's in. Now, on to running backs 31 through 32. If you guys have enjoyed thus far, please make sure you hit that like button as well as that subscribe button. Follow me on Twitter at Notorious, FNTSY. Final 2 running backs of the week, Latavius Murray and Javonte Williams. I want to personally apologize to you guys for getting this out so late on Saturday. Normally, it's running backs and wide receivers on Friday, and then quarterback tight ends on Saturday, but I was on a time crunch yesterday, so we went with wide receivers and quarterbacks because it's much quicker to talk about 24 quarterbacks when compared to talking about 32 running backs. It just takes far longer than it does to talk about the running backs, so I apologize for that. Next week, we should be back on the normal schedule, so don't you worry. It is going to be a-okay. So, week 2 running backs, Latavius, Javonte Williams, running back 31 and 32. Latavius, like I talked about with Williams, could easily be the starting running back. My guess, though, is going into the week, the first snap, looking at the running back, it will be Tyson Williams. But eventually, if Williams struggles again, then Harbaugh's not going to be some guy that just lets him sit out there. He's going to take him out, tug him out, like Robert Kraft type deal, tugging him out, and they bring in Latavius Murray. Don't be surprised if that happens. But if I was to bet which running back outscores who, I would bet on Latavius Murray not being the leader in scoring fantasy points this week. I would bet on it being Tyson Williams. Final running back, like I said, Javonte Williams of the Broncos. That upside's there, too, with him, just like it is with Melvin Gordon, because they're both going to be seeing a lot of work up against the Jaguars. The question is, which guy does more with the touches? Some weeks, the answer is going to be 0. Neither of them, but up against the Jaguars, you would think that Mark Ingram just ran all over them. There's a chance that either of these running backs will be able to do that. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. Not only is it free, I put out this content every single day to help you guys win your 2021 Fantasy Football Championship. Any questions, leave them down below in the comments. I love you guys so much. Have a great rest of your guys' day. We are close to 18,000 subscribers. Not like ultra close where we're going to probably hit it tomorrow or something, but should be able to hit it next week. So thank you guys so much for that. Without you guys, these videos do not get made. Thank you so much to everyone. I love you guys so much. Have a great rest of your guys' day. Please stay safe, and I'll see you guys tomorrow in the morning with a live stream. I'll be live at, I believe, I tweeted it out. Maybe it's 10:30 Eastern Standard Time in the morning. Then I'll be live on Awesemo Fantasy Football. I will direct you guys there from my live stream from 11:45 to 1. And then if you guys play DFS, I will be live for the Showdown slate, the Sunday Night Football from 7 till 8:15. So thank you guys all so much for watching. I love you guys all. Make sure that you stay safe as always. Goodbye.